My husband brought his secretary to my family's anniversary banquet and told me not to embarrass him. She's just my assistant, Elliot said, as if that sentence could wipe away the way her hand rested on his arm. So I smiled. Then I brought my male assistant into the room, let him lean close to fix the clasp of my necklace in front of everyone, and said the exact same thing. Don't overreact, Elliot. He's just my assistant. For the first time in our 7-year marriage, my husband had no reply. The room went silent in that beautiful, expensive way only rich people can manage. Nobody gasped. Nobody shouted. They simply stopped breathing and tilted their heads a little, because scandal is always more delicious when it comes dressed in diamonds. Across the banquet hall, Chloe Bell stood beside my husband in a blush pink dress, looking soft, helpless, and completely out of place at a Sinclair family event. She had one hand looped lightly around Elliot's sleeve, not holding him. Not exactly. Just enough. Enough to make the wives notice. Enough to make the husbands pretend not to. Enough to make the young women at the champagne table whisper, "Isn't that his secretary?" Elliot heard them, of course. Elliot always heard anything that threatened his image. He gave the room a calm smile and placed his hand over Chloe's fingers like he was comforting a frightened child. "Chloe is here for work," he said. "She's just my assistant." There it was. The sentence that had ruined 12 dinners, 4 business trips, 3 charity events, and the last clean corner of my patience. Just my assistant. Chloe lowered her eyes. "I really didn't want to cause trouble, Mrs. Ashford, she said softly. "Mr. Ashford only asked me to come because I'm useful." Useful. Of course she was useful. Useful enough to sit beside him at private investor dinners. Useful enough to wear his jacket when she was cold. Useful enough to call him at midnight because she was scared she had made a mistake on the report. Useful enough for him to leave our bed, step onto the balcony, and talk to her for 40 minutes while I stared at the ceiling pretending not to hear his voice soften. And every time I asked, Elliot gave me that same tired look. The look of a man disappointed that his wife had lowered herself to jealousy. "Vivian," he would say, "she's just my assistant." So that night, I brought mine. Julian Vale stepped forward from behind me. He was 26, tall, calm, and dressed in a black suit sharp enough to cut glass. In one hand, he held my coat. In the other, my event folder, my phone, and a slim leather binder filled with things Elliot did not know I had collected. Elliot stared at him. "Who is that?" I took my glass of sparkling water from Julian's hand. "My assistant." Julian gave Elliot a polite nod. "Mr. Ashford," he said gently. "Please don't misunderstand. Mrs. Ashford only brought me because I'm useful." Someone near the floral arch coughed into their napkin. Chloe's smile twitched. She recognized her own voice coming out of a better mouth. Good. Mirrors are unpleasant when they are held steady. Elliot's face tightened. "Vivian, what is this?" "A family banquet," I said. "Why did you bring him?" "For work." "To your aunt's anniversary party?" I tilted my head. "You brought Chloe." "She helps me with company matters." "Wonderful. Julian helps me with company matters too." Chloe quickly stepped forward, her eyes already shining. "Mrs. Ashford, if my presence makes you uncomfortable, I can leave. I really don't want anyone to misunderstand." Julian immediately looked wounded. "Madam, if my presence makes Mr. Ashford uncomfortable, I can leave as well. I would hate to cause trouble at such a meaningful family event." The silence stretched. Then my Aunt Margot Sinclair laughed under her breath. Aunt Margot was 71, twice widowed, once divorced, and had survived more men than most hospitals. She wore emerald silk, carried a diamond cane she did not need, and treated social destruction like an art form. She looked Julian up and down. "I like this one," she said. "He weaponizes politeness." Julian bowed slightly. "Thank you, Madam Sinclair. I practice." Elliot's jaw clenched. Chloe lowered her lashes and touched his sleeve again. "Mr. Ashford," she whispered, "don't drink too much tonight. You have an early board call tomorrow." Julian turned to me at once. "Madam, no champagne before your speech. You have a finance review at 9 tomorrow, and I worry when you work tired." Chloe's head snapped toward him. Those were almost her exact words from last month's hospital fundraiser. Elliot frowned. "Why does he know your schedule?" I smiled. "He's my assistant." The first crack in Elliot's composure appeared then. Not because I had accused him. Not because I had shouted. Because I had copied him. Men like Elliot could survive anger. Anger made them feel powerful. It let them sigh, soften their voice, and say things like, "You're being emotional." But a mirror? A mirror gave them nowhere to hide. For 6 months, Chloe had been building her little nest inside my marriage. She was always too cold, so Elliot gave her his coat. Too nervous, so Elliot stayed late. Too overwhelmed, so Elliot ordered her dinner. Too fragile, so Elliot defended her before she even finished crying. Once she came to an Ashford family dinner wearing my perfume. When I paused over my soup, she blinked at me. "Oh, Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was your scent. Mr. Ashford said it smelled familiar." Elliot gave me a warning look. "Don't embarrass her, Vivian. It's just perfume." Another time, she brought him homemade soup to a board meeting. "Sir works so hard," she said sweetly. "I worry about his stomach." I asked if she worried about the stomachs of the other 8 executives. She cried. Elliot did not speak to me for 2 days. "She's sensitive," he said later. "You're my wife. You should be more generous." Generous. A beautiful word men use when asking women to donate their dignity. So that night, I became generous. Very generous. When the first dinner bell rang, Elliot offered Chloe his arm. Julian immediately offered me his. I placed my hand lightly on his sleeve. Not because I needed support, because Elliot needed education. His eyes dropped to my fingers. "Vivian, yes, is that necessary?" I looked at Chloe's hand on him. "No more than yours." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Beautiful. The dinner seating had been arranged months earlier, before Chloe had become brave enough to attend family events like a second wife. Elliot and I were supposed to sit together at the main table, but Chloe hovered near him with that hesitant little smile. "Oh," she said softly, looking at the place cards. "I think there must be a mistake. I'm seated at table 7. "As you should be," Aunt Margot said. Chloe's cheeks turned pink. Elliot stiffened. "Margot, Chloe is part of my executive office." "And I am part of this family," Margot replied. "Yet even I know where to sit." Several guests looked down at their plates to hide their smiles. Chloe's eyes filled. Elliot immediately moved. "She can sit beside me." Before he could touch the chair, Julian stepped forward and pulled out mine. "Madam, shall I sit beside you in case you need documents during dinner?" The table froze. Elliot turned slowly. "You are not sitting at the family table." Julian looked startled. "Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood the assistant policy." Aunt Margot coughed into her wine glass. I sat down calmly. "Julian, table 7 will be fine," he nodded. "Of course, madam. Professional boundaries matter." The words landed softly. They cut anyway. Chloe sat at table 7 with the expression of a saint at her own execution. Elliot spent the first course pretending not to watch me. He failed. Every time Julian quietly appeared to replace my water, hand me a note, or remind me of a donor's name, Elliot's face darkened. When Julian leaned close to whisper, "Senator Hayes prefers Patricia, not Patty," Elliot's knife stopped against his plate. When Julian placed my shawl over my shoulders without touching my skin, Elliot's ears turned red, and when he fixed the loose clasp of my necklace with 2 careful fingers, Elliot finally snapped, "Why is he touching you?" The room went still. I looked down at the necklace. "He's helping me." "He's too close," I smiled. "Don't overreact. He's just my assistant." Aunt Margot closed her eyes like she was savoring good music. Chloe stared at her plate. Julian stepped back instantly. "Mr. Ashford, I'm sorry. I did not realize professional care could be misunderstood so easily." Someone at the far end of the table made a choking sound. Elliot glared at him. "You know exactly what you're doing." Julian lowered his eyes. "I'm assisting, sir." The retired judge beside Aunt Margot murmured, "Remarkable assistant." The evening should have ended there. A small public humiliation, a lesson in symmetry. But I had not brought Julian only to annoy my husband. That would have been petty. I had brought him because Chloe had made one terrible mistake. She believed I was only jealous. Women like Chloe love jealous wives. Jealous wives were easy to defeat. You could cry, lower your eyes, whisper that you never meant to cause trouble, and wait for the husband to defend you. But I was not jealous anymore. Jealousy meant I still wanted to compete. I had stopped competing 3 weeks earlier when Julian placed a folder on my desk and said, "Mrs. Ashford, I think you need to see what she has been charging to the company." At first, I thought it would be small, hotel upgrades, luxury meals, designer gifts disguised as client expenses. It was all there. But then Julian found the transfer memos. Chloe was not just flirting with my husband. She was helping him move money. Not enough to look like theft at first glance. Elliot was too careful for that. Consulting fees, vendor advances, marketing retainers, payments routed through shell vendors with names so bland they sounded like office furniture. But Julian had once worked in forensic accounting before becoming my assistant. That was why I had hired him. Not because he was handsome, not because he made Elliot uncomfortable, because he noticed blood under polished floors. 3 weeks of quiet investigation showed me the truth. Elliot had been preparing to leave me, not emotionally, financially. He was moving company money into accounts connected to Chloe's brother, inflating executive expenses, and creating a paper trail that would make the losses look like operational failures under my family's investment fund. My fund, my inheritance, my name. My father had helped build Ashford Medical Systems before Elliot ever wore tailored suits and smiled for magazine covers. I owned 46% of the voting shares through the Sinclair Trust. Elliot ran the company because I let him. I stayed out of the spotlight because I thought marriage was not a battlefield. He mistook my trust for stupidity. That was his first mistake. His second was bringing Chloe to my aunt's banquet. His third was letting her touch his sleeve in front of witnesses. By dessert, Chloe had regained enough courage to approach me near the lemon tarts. "Mrs. Ashford," she said softly, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I'm sorry if I upset you tonight. I know how things must look." I picked up a small plate. "How do they look?" She bit her lip. "I just mean, Mr. Ashford and I work very closely. Sometimes people misunderstand closeness when they don't see the pressure behind it." Julian appeared at my side. "That's very true," he said. "People often misunderstand closeness, especially when it comes with hotel suites and jewelry reimbursements." Chloe went pale. Elliot appeared behind her almost instantly. "What did you just say?" Julian looked at me. Madam, should I place the receipts gently on the table, or would Mr. Ashford prefer them scattered like confetti? The dessert room went silent. I took a sip of water. Gently. We're still pretending to be civilized. Julian opened the leather binder. The first page slid onto the table. Unauthorized suite upgrade. Boston Investor Summit. Occupant. Chloe Bell. The second page. Diamond bracelet purchased under client relations expense. The third. Private car service charged to executive emergency travel. The fourth. Vendor payment to Bell Strategic Consulting, Chloe's brother's company. Elliot's face changed. Not guilt first, fear. That told me everything. Vivian, he said quietly, this is not the place. I laughed once. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. Really? Because when your assistant wore my perfume to your mother's birthday dinner, that was the place. When she adjusted your tie at the Harrington Gala, that was the place. When you brought her here tonight and let my family wonder whether your wife had become optional, that was the place. His voice dropped. You're humiliating me. No, I said. I'm assisting you. Julian placed another page on the table. Here is the transfer schedule for the Shell vendors. Elliot reached for the paper. Aunt Margot's cane struck the floor. Touch that and I'll have security remove you from my anniversary banquet. Elliot froze. For the first time all night, he remembered whose family this was. Mine. Chloe began to cry. Not the graceful kind this time. The panicked kind. Mr. Ashford told me it was normal, she whispered. He said everything went through finance. I didn't know. Elliot looked at her. The room saw it. That tiny, ugly flash of betrayal. Not because she had lied, because she had stopped being useful. Chloe, he said sharply. She stepped back. No, you said Mrs. Ashford didn't pay attention to business details. You said she only cared about appearances. Every head turned to me. I smiled. It almost felt peaceful. Did he? Chloe covered her mouth, realizing too late that survival had made her honest. Elliot's face hardened. Vivian, listen to me. This has gotten out of control. There it was again. The language of men who turn choices into weather. It got out of control. It happened. Things became complicated. No. Lying was simple. Betrayal was simple. The only complicated part was believing you were entitled to escape consequences. Aunt Margot stepped beside me. Elliot, she said, the board will receive these documents tonight. His eyes widened. You can't do that. I already did, Julian said politely. Elliot turned to him with murder in his eyes. Julian blinked. Assistant. Someone laughed. Not quietly this time. The room broke. Whispers spread like fire over dry silk. Chloe was crying openly now. Elliot stood rigid, calculating how much could still be saved. Not me, not the marriage, the company, his name, his seat, his reputation. That was when I understood something I should have accepted years earlier. Elliot had never feared losing me. He feared losing the life my love had funded. I removed my wedding ring at the dessert table. No dramatic speech, no trembling hands. I simply placed it beside the receipts. The diamond made a small, clean sound against the paper. Elliot stared at it. Vivian. You once told me Chloe was just your assistant, I said. Tonight I believed you. His face flickered with confusion. I looked at her. She assisted you in revealing exactly who you are. Aunt Margot smiled. Julian closed the binder. Elliot stepped toward me. Don't do this here. I looked around the room, at the guests who had watched me swallow disrespect for months, at the women who had recognized the humiliation before I did, at Chloe, who had thought softness could disguise greed forever, at Elliot, who had mistaken silence for permission. Then I said, "Why not here? You brought her here." His mouth opened, no answer. Again. That was becoming my favorite sound from him. The next morning, Elliot was removed from operational control pending an internal investigation. By noon, Chloe resigned. By evening, 3 vendors connected to Bell Strategic Consulting were frozen under legal review. Elliot called me 36 times. I answered once. His voice sounded smaller without an audience. "Vivian," he said, "I made mistakes." "No," I said. "You made plans." Silence. Then softer. "I loved you." I looked at my bare finger. Maybe he had. Once. In the beginning. Before admiration became entitlement. Before partnership became performance. Before he learned that another woman's tears could make him feel powerful, and my dignity could be spent like company money. "Maybe," I said. "But you respected yourself more." He breathed in sharply. "And Julian?" I almost laughed. Even ruined, Elliot still needed the wrong villain. "Julian is my assistant," I said. Then I ended the call. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Elliot left the company with a settlement smaller than his pride could survive. Chloe tried to sell her version of the story online, but it collapsed under documents, dates, and the unfortunate fact that people enjoy a crying mistress less when receipts are attached. As for Julian, he stayed exactly what he had always been: professional, useful, appropriately distant. At Aunt Margot's next dinner, she raised her glass and said, "To assistants." Everyone laughed. I did too. But later, when I stood alone on the balcony, I thought about the woman I had been before that banquet, the woman who asked too many gentle questions, who waited for explanations, who let herself be called jealous because she still believed love could be rescued by being reasonable. I wanted to forgive her, so I did, because she had not been stupid, she had been loyal, and loyalty only becomes foolish when it is handed to someone who treats it like a leash. That was the lesson Elliot taught me. Not that men cheat, not that pretty secretaries cry, not that public revenge feels good, though for one night it did. The real lesson was quieter. When someone keeps disrespecting you in public, they are not asking for privacy. They are asking whether you will help them hide it. And the day I stopped hiding Elliot's shame for him was the day he finally had to wear it himself.